Hello, everyone. My name is Julie, and I am here with Sheri Perl. And thank you so much for being here with me today. I am super excited about this conversation. So I want to get as much in as we can because there's a lot and we don't have a whole lot of time. So let's just get into it. But actually, first, would you mind just sharing just a little bit about yourself and your background?
Wow. Okay. Hi,
Maybe a
everybody.
minute. Yeah.
I'm honored to be here, Julie. Thank you. My background, well, it's 50 years of background, folks. I am 70 years old, and my experience with these kinds of things started when I was 20. So it's 50 years of exploring metaphysics with an emphasis on spiritual healing and mediumship. So it starts out with my story. I could share the screen and then you'll have the ability to actually follow along with some photos. So let's see if I
Great.
can.
Wonderful. I'm glad that you helped me figure out how to do this share
Yes, isn't
screen so
that
we could do this on
wonderful?
future interviews.
So I call this particular slideshow from skeptic to EVP researcher.
Wow.
EVP stands for electronic voice phenomenon, which is all the rage now. So many of your listeners may have heard about it. In fact, it's mind-blowing. So we'll get to that. But it starts out that, I was born in 1951 into a home that had zero spirituality whatsoever. My father was an atheist. My mother was agnostic. We did not believe in miracles, and we were not we were a culturally Jewish family, so we celebrated Hanukkah and not Christmas, but there was no spirituality. There was no sense of a higher power. Miracles, people who believed in miracles, to me were just, well, let's put it this way. I thought people who believed in what I now teach and talk and write about were either deluded or maybe just plain stupid. But when I was 14, 15, I would just think, well, that's just ridiculous. I'm just smarter than that. And so here I am in my high school,
Yeah.
16 years of age. I was diagnosed with something called Crohn's disease. Many
Hmm.
of your listeners may have heard of it. It's
Hmm.
also known ileitis, ileocolitis. These are inflammatory bowel diseases, cause a lot of pain and a lot of time in the bathroom. And of course, my family, Lily, my husband's moving around the other room. My parents, none of us believed in anything. And this was 1967. So
Mm.
we didn't talk about health foods even. Forget meditation and the concept of mediums. This was not the world that I was growing up in. And so we did what most people in those days would do. We went to medical doctors and they did x-rays and eventually diagnosed me with this illness and gave me
Hmm.
all kinds of medication. And we did not believe in anything else. So that's all that we did. And I tried to continue on with my little life. I was in high school. I was a cheerleader. Tried to continue with my life. But the disease just kept progressing. After I'd had the disease for a year, a dear friend of my father's who was British came to visit us, and he told me about a man in England by the name of Harry Edwards, who was supposedly a spiritual healer who could heal people from clear across the ocean. And I said, baloney.
What year was this?
This was 1968. And I said,
Okay. Ooh,
absolute baloney.
sure.
No way, no way I'm going to fall for something like that. I'm not that stupid. And so I went through another year of Crohn's and eventually ended up a very, very, very sick girl.
Mm.
Major surgeries were performed because they couldn't stop my bowel from bleeding. None of the medications I was ever on ever made one dent of difference. And then I was infected with hepatitis C through blood transfusions because in 1969, they did not check blood. So
Wow.
it's about now 3 years I've been really sick, and they do some blood tests and they tell my parents, because again, what did we do? We went back to the best medical doctors we could find, and they ran blood tests and they told my parents that if I would bed rest for 6 months, I would get better.
Mm.
And I, after 6 months with blood tests, maybe 5 months with blood tests and zero change in them at all, the doctors got concerned and said, well, we're discovering a new form of hepatitis. It's chronic. It doesn't clear up. We'll do a biopsy and see if she has that. If she has it, it's not good. So they do the biopsy, and of course, I had it. And they told my parents to give money to research and hope that they would come up with a cure.
Oh, man.
But if they didn't, I would not make another 10 years. That was when I was 19. So, I didn't believe in this stuff any more than, than the biggest skeptic in the world. But desperation paves the way to an open mind. And I began to hit me that I was in a serious state and that I had nothing to lose. There was a song very big in the 60s, Bobby McGee, and there's a sentence in it, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And it was like, there was nothing to lose. I figured there was no way this could help, but I had nothing to lose.
Right.
My mind had opened one tiny crack, but maybe that's all it takes sometimes,
Which was my next question, which was what got you interested in this topic, and
there you go.
Desperation at this point.
Right. I would been sick for so long, and so we contacted my dad's friend who gave us the name and said his name was Mr. Harry Edwards. They called him the man in the sanctuary. I have to tell you, I mean, Julie, I thought this was the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. But again, things had happened to me through the illness I didn't know could happen. At the time, I had a temporary ileostomy. I don't know.
Yes, I do.
No, I'm an 18-year-old girl, and I had it for 15 years because after the healing, I wouldn't go to doctors for years.
Wow.
I mean, I was like, things that happened I didn't even know existed. I didn't know such things could be done until I woke up with one. And so, in fact, I just started to reason and go, well, maybe I don't know everything. Things that happened to me, I didn't know could happen to a girl at 18. So maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I'm not so smart. And anyway, what if I got to lose? There was no belief. This was not a faith healing where I believed. So I got well. I was desperate. And so we called the office. My father had an office in England. And they looked him up and they found the sanctuary, and they called up and they said, oh, just have her send us a letter telling us of the trouble for which help is needed. And I thought, what the hell are they talking about? But what did I have to lose? And my dad was going to England on business, and he offered to hand deliver the letter to Mr. Edwards. He saw him saw Mr. Edwards on a Thursday night. The next night in New Jersey, Friday night, I had so much energy, I was flying. And one thing is, when you have something like Crohn's disease, you have it because you're in pain. The Hep C, the main symptom was just no energy. The body doesn't fight. You don't run the fever, that you don't get jaundice. Your body just gives in, and the disease cells, they said, were attacking the healthy cells and scarring them. And that's why they figured I only had 10 years. Well, anyway, I did not know what was happening. I got a feeling in my right side where the liver is, which I would never have known where the liver was except for where they did the biopsy. And I got that feeling, when you cross your legs too long and you get that pins and needles kind of thing. I had that feeling in my right side. And I was uplifted physically and emotionally, like I had energy. And I kept telling my mom and everyone, something's happening. And they just thought, isn't it nice that Sheri's having a good night? And it was 1971, I guess. I was 20. And at that point, I said, I have no idea what the hell is going on, but I'm going to find out. Now, we had blood tests again every month with no change. And 2 weeks after my father delivered the letter, I went for my monthly blood test, and it had moved a third of the way to normal. So now I'm getting really excited. And my father had brought a few books that Mr. Edwards had given him. So I started reading the books because I couldn't, I kept saying, well, how does this energy reach me transatlantically? And this is in England, and I'm in New Jersey. How is this possible? And then I read his books, and he said he didn't work alone, that he worked with spirit doctors who were spirits who had been doctors in their last life. And that after they crossed into the realm of spirit, they still had concern for healing the sick.
Mm.
And that the spirit could come to the patient very often while they were sleeping and work with their spirit and their physical body. And that a spirit, there's no distance or time
Mhm.
in the spirit realm. So a spirit could be anywhere in no time, so that was the start of my learning, was everything that I learned from Mr. Edwards. And I have to admit, at that time, I truly believed he was God. So this was June of that year. And then in September, I had another set of blood tests, and that had moved 2/3 of the way towards normal.
Amazing.
At this point, I'm reading his books and I'm learning about meditation, and I'm trying to learn everything I can to understand this, because I knew something I couldn't see or feel or touch had helped me in ways that nothing ever had before, but I still couldn't see it, and I wanted to understand more. But what really was the turning point, because even my doctors, they saw I was getting well, and I'd say, well, I'm in touch with this healer, and they'd say, you're just that kind of kid. And
Uh-huh.
no one could get it. And so in December of that year, I went for the last set of blood tests, and I had them on a Monday. And on Friday, I called to get the results, and the doctor said, we don't know how to explain it, count your blessings. Your tests look really, really good. And this is the amazing thing. This was what really turned it for me. That night, I sat down to write Mr. Edwards a letter, but this was 1971, and we did not have an internet or email. So everything went through
Sure.
snail mail. So
Yes.
I'm sitting down to write him the letter to tell him I just got this good news. However, I
Mm.
hadn't even finished the letter when the next day there was a letter from him in my mailbox. And it said, and he never said anything like this before. And he said, dear friend, I feel that the healing has finally reached you. And this week you will receive the good news that, Lily, I'm going to throw you out of the room if you don't stop.
You will receive what? Did he say?
This week you will receive, you will be this week you will be having tests, and those tests will prove to you the good news that healing has taken place. So please, when you get this information, please write to us to confirm this, so we can all confirm this. At that point, I remember I read this and I rolled off the kitchen chair and went, he knew before I knew, because that letter had to leave England before, to travel before I even, as not only that, but no one else knew I was having blood tests but me and my family, and no one contacted the healer but me. And that's when I said, there's something going on here. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to find out. And that started my journey. Shortly, after that, I ended up in the home of Jane Roberts. I don't know if you've heard of Seth in the Seth books.
I have.
Seth would come through Jane every week and take over her body and speak to us and talk to us about his particular philosophy. And I had the demonstration of actually seeing in front of me trance mediumship in 1973 and 4, and that's where I met my husband. And so I was living with my husband now in New York City, and I wrote my book, Healing from the Inside Out, and updated it in 2011 and added "and the Outside In" when I learned that there was even a bigger picture that I saw in 1989 when I first wrote it. And Jerry and I adopted 3 babies at birth, not all at one time, they're years apart. But our middle child, Danny, passed of an overdose in 2008. Up until that time, my work was very much involved with Mr. Edwards and the sanctuary. He passed in 1976, but I would still put people in prayer by hoping I was getting through to him. I really didn't know for sure. The more I educated and taught about it, had my book out, taught classes about Seth. But after Danny passed, naturally, my work turned more towards bereavement, because I had a leg up, which is that I had been going to mediums for years to talk to Mr. Edwards, and my dad, who'd passed very young of a heart attack, same year as Mr. Edwards. Mr. Edwards was in his 80s. My dad was 53. So I would go to this medium and I would be able to talk with them through this medium, Glenn Dove, who was wonderful out here he's on Long Island, I'm in the city. And so when Danny passed, I had this incredible leg up in that I knew I would be in touch with him. I mean, that doesn't make it any less devastating. I mean, you find your child in his apartment, dead in his bed. I don't care what knowledge you have. I don't care. It's still the most heart-wrenching. So I don't want any mother watching this to think, oh, I just went, oh man, I'll just talk. I was as devastated as any parent will be.
How old was he?
22.
22. If I could do math really quick, I would figure that out, but I'm not really that great with math in my head. How long, how long had you said your husband passed when?
Not my husband, my son.
Well, you said something about
my dad passed at 53, and he
your
and Mr.
dad.
Edwards,
Oh,
I was 7, and he was 53, and it was the same year as Mr. Edwards, 1976.
Okay, so so how long had you been in contact with your dad, but when your son passed?
Oh, for years, you see, because my dad passed in 1976. My dad passed before there were any grandchildren even in the family.
Oh, okay.
So I'd been going to this wonderful medium. Even both my sons had been to Glen Dove, my daughter. I mean, we'd been going because this was my fascination, spirituality and mediumship and communication. So so I would go out to Glen Dove's, and I would be able to talk to my dad, and Glen Dove would say, and there's this guy, Harry, here. And Harry says, tell her she can do what I did. And I'm like, oh, come on. So through Glenn was the first I really learned that Mr. Edwards was with me and I could work with him, because I really didn't know. So then Danny passed, and my work became more involved in bereavement, because naturally I started seeking communication with Danny.
Mm-hmm.
So initially I would just go to different mediums, of course, first Glenn. And 1 week after Daniel passed, I was there with my daughter, who was 16 at the time, and he came through, and it was like we just picked up where we left off. We discussed everything that happened. And so over the next 2 years, my older boy said, Mom, if you want to go to different mediums and try out connecting with Danny through different means, I'll drive you, I'll go with you. So the next 2 years I spent going to a great many mediums to see if the medium was a true medium. Would Danny come through the same with his personality, with his perspective, which of course he did. And so in I guess it was 2011, I self-published my own book, Lost and Found. That's the cover. A mother connects up with her son in spirit, to let people know of all these incredible communications that had come through Danny, and to let them know the ways I began to understand I was hearing him through my own head.
Wow.
Like right after he passed, I'd go into a room and I'd be like, I should have known, because I had woken up at 3 a.m. that night, and this feeling of you woke up and I couldn't get back to sleep. I was so angry. I couldn't wrestle myself back to sleep, but I didn't know why. So that next morning I was like, I should have called him. And in my head, I said, I should have known. And in my head, I hear, Mom, how could you have known? I didn't even know. And I remember thinking, going to my room and just like listening to what was going through my own head made me feel better than talking to any of the people who'd come to visit. But I still really just thought it was me trying to comfort myself. Only I was mad at myself. So why would I say that? So I'm kind of wondering, could this be Dan? Is this just me? Which is the biggest question that all parents go through, as well as mediums in the beginning, because it was a revelation to me when Glen Dove told me, I don't hear your son in his voice. I hear it all in my own voice.
Oh.
Because I always thought he would hear Danny in Danny's voice. And I finally realized that it just comes through like that still small voice that's constantly talking to us, but you have to learn to sense when it's them. And as I began to learn more and more about it, I decided to put it into my own book, Lost and Found, which is at Amazon. A mother connects up with her son in spirit. But then time went on. I had been actually, before Daniel passed, I was earning a degree, and I was up at a university in Canada. And one of the speakers was a man named Mark Macy. who's probably one of the most knowledgeable in this field of electronic voice phenomenon. So Danny was well alive, and it was, and I was fascinated back then. I thought, wow, that's amazing. But I did not think it was something I would ever do or that I could ever do. And also I had young children, it just there was no place for it in my life at the time. But now Daniel's in spirit, and I see an article about this couple, Natalia and Vadim Sitnev, and how they're recording EVPs, and they're sure they're speaking to their son. So it was at that point that I said, well, I want to know about this now. If they can do it, why can't we do it? What's to it? So
Right.
I contacted Craig Hogan, who's the president of the AREI, which is the Afterlife Research and Education Institute. And I asked him, did he know where there might be directions on how to do this? And he had some directions at his website, but I wasn't computer savvy enough to get anywhere. So I hired my computer tech guy, who was so wonderful, because I'm telling him, well, I want to record spirits and I need sound and I need a recording program. And he never went, you are weird. He just was like, well, let's just get this doing it. And he set it up so that on my own computer, I had sound and a recording program.
Cool.
And when I always say to people is, this is not rocket science.
Okay.
You know how like back in the 80s or the 70s, like everybody was still had LPs, was recording them onto cassettes for the car.
Yes.
All we do is play sound and record it. That's all we freaking do on our end. What makes this a phenomenon is that spirit comes and does something we have no idea how to do. And that's that they use thought to change sound, just pure sound, into words.
Yeah, this is so interesting because I really know nothing about, I've heard like two things.
Absolutely phenomenal. So like, for example, I'm going to play for you examples where I use everything from scratching my fingernail on my computer by the input button. So, I mean, you don't need to use gibberish, but to begin with, most EVP researchers will use a human vocal gibberish. That is made by having someone, say, read from a book, and then it's put through a software called EVP Maker that just chops it up into gibberish. It's only downloadable on PCs. Sonia Rinaldi, who's one of the most renowned in this field, she has someone, what she calls unbuild it, like go through it and just chop out all the things that make actual words.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes forever, and like 20 minutes goes down to like a second. It's so hard to do. But I learned about EVP Maker, which is this software where you just run through the reading and it just chops it.
Okay.
The idea being that you have something that you should not be able to make out words in. Why does it work better for most people than water going down the bathtub, which I can use? Probably because it's made from a human vocal. So it sounds more like a human voice.
Okay, interesting.
Like plant a radish, get a radish, right? So, I'm going to play for you samples. This is a sample of human vocal gibberish. You know what? I even have speakers here, so make it a little bit louder. So where is the little, here it is. Let me plug this in. Okay, so this is human vocal. This is English male. This is made from a male reading, and it's been chopped into gibberish. Let's see if people can hear it. So you hopefully couldn't hear any words, right?
I may have gotten one word. I thought I heard theory, that was it. Maybe not.
You hope not to have any words in that. The goal with the gibberish is to not. Now here, this is female gibberish. It should mostly sound like blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Here's an example from a reading I did. A mom says, you'll hear the gibberish in the background, right? So what we do is when I do a reading for a mom, she or I will call each other. I'll put my cell phone on speaker. I'll line my cell phone up to the computer. I'll hit the sound, and then I'll say to the mom, okay, and she'll ask her first question, and then we let the sound run.
Okay.
I don't hear anything then, but then I go back through it, going through it like 2-3 seconds at a time, and I see if I can find English good words. So listen to this one, for example.
Are you in heaven? Are you in heaven?
I am.
Right.
Hey, Chris, this is another mom.
Hey, Christian, can you hear me now? Hey, Christian, can you hear me now?
What happened to, oh, I switched off it.
Hey, Christian, can you hear me now?
I can. Now, here's one that made from human vocal gibberish. I'm very happy. I mean, obviously, it's not like, you're starting with this. So to get this is significant, even though it's not a perfect science. We don't get, now this mom lost 2 children. She asked, are you together? And we certainly are. We certainly are. I don't know if you could hear it or not.
Very lightly.
Danny, can you, let me put okay, this is me asking Danny, can you say, I love you, Ma? I'll put the speaker in this time and he'll hear him say, I love you, Ma. Just put this in. Okay.
Danny, can you say, I love you, Ma?
Yeah.
Danny, can you say, I love you, Ma?
So we don't know how they do that. We don't know how to do that. If it were just me doing it, when I played it back, all I would hear is exactly what I recorded.
Right.
So it's a very interesting phenomenon. Now, here's something very interesting. Sonia Rinaldi, a researcher and a friend in Brazil, sent me this gibberish of a little boy named Lorenzo. It's gibberish Portuguese that she had made.
Na escola falamos português, vamos descobrir sobre, depois você vê se eu sou.
So I asked Danny, I said, say something to me in English to let me know if I can use this. And you'll hear I speak in English.
Say something to me in English to let me know I should use this.
I speak in English.
Wow.
That's a really good one. Now, the reason it's quiet right before it is when I find an EVP, I lower the sound of the few bytes right in front of it so I can isolate it. Otherwise, you just be, blah, 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 blah. It's harder to hear. So.
Oh.
Say
Okay.
something to me in English to let me know I should use this.
I speak in English.
I nearly died when I heard that.
That's amazing.
Another language. Now, this is made, these, and I hope you'll hear them, are made by scratching my finger on the computer over by where the input mic is.
Okay.
There are some scientists in the field that do not like the gibberish at all because they think you can get a positive, or they want to get what they call a transform EVP. And that means it was transformed from sound to words. It never had a word in it to begin with.
Okay.
So I scratch my finger, right? That has no words in it. So this is what finger scratch sounds like. It sounds like this. And this sounds to me like my son's voice if he was whispering, but it says, Mom, I'm happy. I'm scratching my darn finger on the computer. I mean, that to me is really exciting because you know, people say you could play games with gibberish. I don't know. I don't do that. But the point is it's really a hassle.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. Now,
Wow.
some people will talk to you about things like, you'll hear about things like Phasmabox. This is software that can be downloaded. When I first heard about it, I said, what do you mean there's like ghosts in the box? It just creates sounds. It creates sounds for spirit to use. But the beauty is, for some reason, we don't have to hear it like the gibberish. We don't hear the sounds, and EVPs just come through. So
Wow.
I'll use that. And one night I did a big group reading I run a prayer registry for parents who've lost children. And we did a big group reading. And I had Phasma box on, and I said, kids, are you happy? And they go, we're bitching. Wait, it's too funny. Are you happy?
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And when I do readings, the most astounding things will come through. I could play you endless amounts of them, but what's really interesting is that once you get into this field, things just start to happen.
Mm.
Now, for example, when I was going to a conference in Arizona, the AREI group had a conference, and I was on the phone trying to make an appointment, trying to get a hotel room. And while I'm on the line, me and the fella are talking, and all of a sudden we just hear static. It just cuts in like, he can't hear me, I can't hear him. Then it would stop and we'd be talking again. And by the second time it happened, I went, ooh. So I went and got my computer where I have that recording program, and I played it. And listen to this. It's choppy. It came through a phone. We were on a phone call, but it says here. It sounds like a robot, but it says here to get everyone together. Here to get everybody.
Wow.
It's like spirit cut in on this phone line, and that's amazing. Then one day, my friend Vicky, who's a researcher, we were texting each other. And she had studied Seth in the 70s, and I was in Seth class in the 70s. So we're texting, and all of a sudden on our phones, we both get an audio symbol. And she said, did you send me an audio message? And I said, no. Did you send me one? And she said, no.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the same thing. I recorded it into the recording program and raised the volume. And here we were talking about Seth. Listen to this.
Yeah. Hello, Seth.
Oh my
Seth. Hello,
goodness.
Yeah. Hello, Seth.
So once you start playing around with this stuff, then you don't really know, it starts happening that you can get things through your phone. You can get, it's absolutely the most astounding thing. And so
How long have you been doing
I started-
EVPs for other people?
I started around 2017, 2018.
2017. Okay. Wow.
I started learning how to do it in 2016, and then people started asking, and I just said, well, we'll try. And to my surprise, things really came out. Can you see this now? Are you
I'm seeing Seth. Hello, Seth. Image.
Are you seeing my website? Okay,
No.
Okay, stop share, and I'm going to share again because I want to show your listeners how they can, if they want to learn to do EVP. Okay, this is my website. And for anyone who's lost a child, the prayer registry is a set of calendars that contain the names of all the children on their passing dates. And so each children is prayed for on their passing date every year. It's just a way of honoring them and remembering them. But for example, let's say somebody wants to learn how to do this for themselves. Well, I knew I couldn't follow the directions that were given me, but my tech fella did a great job creating this. So we got our heads together and created the EVP slideshow. And I've made it available for free at my website. And it's a slideshow with a split screen, and one half has instructions for PCs and the other half has instructions for Apples. And you can literally download what you need for sound to make the recording. And then there's also on here a YouTube video where I demonstrate how to use the recording program. So if anybody is interested in learning more about doing this themselves, they can go to, it's just sheriperl.com and go to the EVP slideshow. They can download instructions. If you don't have in your computer PowerPoint or Keynote, which is what's in, you may have to purchase those, but all the software in the slideshow we made free. So people don't have to spend a lot of money. If they want to learn to communicate,
Wow, that's
it's
wonderful.
doable. It's a really wonderful thing. So I can stop that for now. So, you asked me earlier, do I think anyone can do it, or do I think that I think that certain people are naturally more open to it, but I think if you really, really wanted to, and if you had loved ones that you really wanted to communicate, that I think anyone could speak to their loved ones. It's just that it's very time consuming. Not making the recording. I only make a 3-minute recording, but imagine going through 3 minutes, 2 seconds at a time.
True. Right.
So it's the auditing, and people today, they don't want to, I mean, we've had classes, we've had all kinds of tutorials. And to tell you the truth, most people who take it say, if you hear from my child, do let me know. There's only a small handful that actually wanted to put in the time it took to make a recording and sit and listen to it.
Huh.
And it's not that making the recording is anything difficult. It's the time it takes to audit it. People just want to be given a device where they can just push a button. But at this point, this is as far as we've got.
This is what we have for now, but that's quite a bit. And I'm sure maybe it will be improving. The more this is known, I don't know, how well known is EVP? I just started learning about it.
It's getting more well known because there's so much loss of young people today. I think that parents, even with all the wars and all the senseless loss that humans experience, I think today between overdose and suicide, more parents are outliving their children, and it's creating a need on their part to know where. I always say the parental mantra is, where is my child and is he or she okay?
Absolutely.
And in their body or in spirit, it's something a parent can't let go of.
I could understand that.
Right. So you would go to any end. And that's why sometimes I do get frustrated with parents. Like, I have a very small scholarship program that I fund myself for parents that need a reading. I have a wonderful medium that makes a price that I can afford. And when I welcome people to the prayer registry, I mentioned about this, and a woman asked for one, and I said, well, look, I've wired the money for 2 September readings. I have to wait till next month. Can you contact me early next month? And she's like, if I remember. And I'm like, well, you know what? The bottom line is, if you in a month still want a free reading with one of the finest mediums on the face of the earth, you'll remember, or your son will nudge you. But the bottom line is, we can do better in this loss. We can. But the only real solace is connecting with them and growing in the knowledge that that's what we really are. And you haven't lost that.
Are you still communicating with him? What do you call it? Telepathically, or getting impressions from him?
Daniel?
Yeah.
Well, I speak, you see, there was a development to my work that is just, well, you see, I didn't play everything, but there's a man named Keith Clark, who is an EVP researcher, who he makes these electronic sound sources. That's what we call the sounds that we use. He makes them some that he calls streams, and they're just electronic sound. They have no vocal in them. And I was listening to one day, and I slowed it down by like 50%. And all of a sudden, I just started hearing word after word after word. And then I would think a question, and I would hear my question come through the line. And it's developed to a point now where I can go on that line and talk to anybody I want. I mean, who are part of what I call, everyone has their own spiritual entourage, the people that love them and stay close to them. And I can go on, and they have given me so much help and direction and information. I didn't understand it. I thought everyone could hear it. And then it was explained to me by Wendy Zamet, who's one of the most knowledgeable people in this field, that I was clairaudient and that I was getting the words in my head first. I was completely unaware of it.
Wow.
That's what allowed me to make it out when it came through the sound. So for years, I would always know things, but I was one of those people that would not trust it. And until I was able to make it audible and actually hear it, did I realize that I heard it first, but I didn't believe me. And that's why I tell most people, sit down in a chair if you're missing someone, whether it's your husband, your child, your mother. Sit down, take a few breaths, tell them how much you love them, put out whatever questions on your heart, and just put it out there and just let it go. And then just during the day, just look what passes through. If I want to see you in that beautiful face of yours, I'm going to look out through my eyes. I'm going to look at you. But if I want to see spirit, I have to look in.
Mhm.
And that inner screen is also the same screen that we call imagination. So we think it's just my imagination. And that's what I did for years. I'd have mom say to me, gee, that's just what my son would have said. Thank you so much. I didn't know the child was telling me. I just thought it was me saying what, because that's how subtle it is.
Interesting.
It's
Yeah.
just so subtle. And I really do think they'll come around us, they'll answer us, it'll be your own voice, but sometimes it'll just be something that's so much more Danny than me.
Right.
And I don't know how much time we have, but I can tell you a story that's hysterical, where I finally realized it had to be Danny because that's Danny.
Yeah. One more. I know we're out of time, but I
Yes.
do I'm just loving this conversation, and it's just even just right now, just bringing me a lot of hope. So yeah, if we could, just maybe one more.
Well, it's a great story. Right after he passed, I was sitting in my room and I had my computer on my lap, and for some reason, something in my head said to go to my music, to my iTunes. And there was a song there that was in my iTunes because I had taken the soundtrack from the movie. I didn't know the song. I never knew the song. And it was called Freebird. And I hit on it. And the lyrics were like, it was, if I leave today, will you remember me? I have to be moving on. And at the end, it says, but if I stayed here, it couldn't be the same because you can't tame this bird. You just can't. I just can't change. And I couldn't change. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to call him Freebird from now on. And so he died in July of 2008, and it's August, and we've moved in. We're in the city now, but my husband was playing golf at a club right near where our house had been. So he asked me to come up with him that one day, and I decided to get out of the city and just ride around in the golf cart, because even though I don't like golf, it's very country, it's very pretty. So I go up with him and he pulls off the highway. Now we're in the hometown where I raised my boys. And you get that knife in the heart, like, oh my God, Danny and I used to drive here. And I hear in my head, Mom, exactly. It was not a bed of roses. He said, come on, Mom. I would be like up late partying with my friends. Then I'd go to sleep. And when you try to wake me up, I'd be really grouchy. He says, I'm right there with you. I'm always with you now. I'm with you more now. Don't cry, Mom. And I felt so much better, but I cried the whole way to the club. And so we get to the club, and my husband goes to get into golf clothes, and I go to walk to where I meet him at the first tee. And these guys start coming towards me with golf carts. And my first thought, vanity, thy name is woman, is, oh my God, I'm crying. I must look terrible. I've got to grab my mirror. And I hear in my head, Mom, what the F? Of course, I heard the word. Do you care? They're probably assholes anyway. That's so Danny. And in my head, I said, you know what, Danny? They might not be assholes, but you're absolutely right. Why do I care? I'm not taking out the pocket mirror. And I meet my husband, and I'm feeling so good. Like the sun is setting, and I'm so happy, and I'm really feeling good. And then we get in the car, we're driving down that West Side Highway to get back to Manhattan. Hudson River's on the right, and it hits you, that same old, how do I know this is Danny? It's probably just me. I mean, how do I know? And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in my head, I say, Danny, if this is really you, and I'm not just doing this to make myself better, I need a sign. And I get the impulse to look at the river. And I swear to God, right there is this white sailboat, and right on the side in big royal blue block letters, Free Bird.
How do they do that? It's so amazing.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not that he made the boat and put it there. It's that he knew it was there, and he gave me the impulse.
Opportunity.
That's the subtleness of it all. You see, it took me a long time to figure that out. How did he make that boat? He didn't make the boat.
Yeah.
But he knew it was there, and he knew if he could get his mom to think the question, give me a sign.
Right.
Half the time when we think, give me a sign, they're giving us that impulse because they know
there's a sign. Oh, I love that.
They can do and what they can't do. They're not going to create a pink elephant and put it in front of you.
Right.
They're not magicians, but they can influence our thoughts. They do it every day, and we don't even know it.
I love that.
So it's wonderful. The truth is that the more you learn about life after death, the better it gets, and the less there is to fear. And I'm not at the jumping off point quite yet. I'm only 70, but hey, 20 years, I'm going to be 90. I don't know how that happened. I am not scared. You know,
Yeah, well,
I hope I don't plummet out of an airplane. I mean, nobody likes the idea of a a brutal or an ill death, but
of
I am
course.
not scared to leave this body. I really do believe that I will join Mr. Edwards and those who I work with, and that they are where they say they are. I've communicated with so many of them. I know they are who they say they are. You can't make
Right.
it up.
Right.
So
So
if Danny
amazing.
once said to me when I got into a taxi once and I was feeling nervous, and I heard him say, Mom, because Danny was a loose cannon kid. He said, Mom, what are you worried about? If Daniel Migdal survived death, don't you think you will too? And I said, you're absolutely right. What am I worried about? This goddamn driver cracked into another car. I'll see you sooner than later. And it's a great way to live your life.
Wow.
Not
Yeah.
that fear hanging over your head of the noose, you know. So I
Oh
thank
my
you so much
goodness.
for this opportunity to share
This is amazing. I've learned so much and I'm so inspired and I love this. Thank you for doing this with me and
My
sharing.
pleasure. Anytime, you know how to find me now. So if you ever
Yes. Oh my gosh. And
you're-
I'm going to get, all the links, so anyone who's listening can get your books or can connect with
you
you
know what? If
and
they
your
go to
website.
sheriperl.com, which is all you need to give them, my books are listed there.
Okay.
With links to them. My slideshows
Everything's
are
there.
videos,
Okay.
everything's there. They just need to go there.
Awesome.
So
Well,
thank you for this
thank
opportunity.
you. Thank you so much. I guess we're going to have to sign off. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope you're having just a wonderful day or evening wherever you are on the planet or off the planet. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.